input is $12,000. The budget for phase 2, which is really processing the data and coming up with the recommendations for the master plan and sharing those recommendations with the community, is $30,000. And the budget for phase 3, which is the finalization of the plan and implementation of the plan, is $8,000. So it is a total budget of $50,000, and the proposal is that half of it would be paid from the 2013 budget, half of it would be paid from the 2014 budget. Councilmember Juan has pledged $2,500 to support our master plan, and the planning committee and the board will request funding from the at-large members. And the thought is that there will be a steering committee, as I said, with some members of the board as well as members of the community to serve on a steering committee to shepherd this master plan through the process. And the total process, based on Aaron's estimate, it would take about 8 months from start to finish. So that is the proposal on the master plan. I guess we need a motion.
Well, I think the motion is going to be, we talked to Aaron about the funding of this. A couple of quick comments. One is I think those of us that heard and have gone through this in a couple of ways are convinced that this is what we need to do in this neighborhood. It's going to be an astonishing amount of work. There's a lot of public output, and for this to work, we've got to get out and do the outreach and get the inputs to make this effective, and I think we can do both. But it just means that if anybody thought that this next year wasn't going to be 1,000 laughs, think again. And secondly, that the ultimate goal of this, after we approve it, is it goes to City Council for approval and adoption by City Council. That's all these others. Midtown has one, we're in Midtown. Potsy has one, Candler has one, Brookwood's doing one. And the direct element, I spoke to Alex outside, and I didn't want to put him on, so I should have, but I mean, he has agreed to contribute $2,500 immediately, add more in next year's funds if we're at it too. But $2,500 for now. I think we can ask other council members for some. We're going to have to pay for a bunch of it. But as he said, this is the gift that we'll keep on giving. In the eyes of the planning of department heads, council members, particularly in planning, city planning, having things approved by city council puts them 3 notches ahead of good ideas that haven't gone through any kind of vetting process or any kind of certification. Because we are deeply concerned about Monroe, and the answer, while we want cops there now, the answer is to try to think of structural changes and other alternatives that will incentivize people to slow down 24/7, because we're deeply worried about traffic along Virginia, and we need to struggle with inland with the announced expansion and just make this work somehow as best we can, because we're concerned over our cliff with traffic there, with folks trying to walk to Spark, and because North Highland will be built out at some point in accordance with the NC capacity. The time to get a hold of this is right now. Lastly, just a quick anecdote from the planning side. We just went over to an application from Chase Manhattan, or Chase Bank, in Virginia-Highland for something that did not conform to their drawing, conformed not a bit to the POTS plan. It was not in keeping with the Beltline overlay, and did not match the highly detailed Virginia-Highland master plan, which were being pushed around, and it was pretty much dead on arrival. The fact that it didn't conform to any of those pieces really gave added weight at every level to it, and it was back to the designing board. The object's not to get rid of Chase Bank. The object is to have them come back and do something that matches the traffic, the adopted traffic goals, appearance goals, pedestrian goals that have already been carefully considered. So this plan wouldn't quite look like that. And the last piece is we think we have a lot of things we do in this neighborhood that are environmentally conscious. A lot of them come out of the planning committee and our attempts to really deal with stormwater. This is a way to formalize and memorialize those in a document so that it's not just the opinion of a few people sitting around that night on the planning committee. It's been vetted right through. And I think this will be, as Alex said, the gift that keeps on giving. It's going to be a huge amount of work for the folks here, and particularly on the planning committee, but all of us. And now, I also want to comment on the cost, because Peggy wrote and said, is there any way to save some money here? It was a fair question. But in fact, those are the numbers that Aaron projected some potential costs in this. It may go better than this. If the meetings go well, they go smoothly, good input, we can click along, and we have reasons that I won't mention now to think we might. This thing can go faster, it will take less meetings. But we projected kind of a worst case scenario here for what this takes, and I think the motion was going to be a total of $50,000. We can't pay for it out of this budget. We're open to pay 25, an additional 20. We appropriated 5 2 months ago to start this process. An additional 20 this year, and what we're committing to is to do 25 out of next year's budget to make this work. And, it's a sobering thought with all the other things we have in front of us, but we're playing the game with one hand tied behind our back unless we get going on this. And I'm 100% convinced of it. Other comments or questions from the board or from members of the audience? Yes, ma'am.
No, I think it's a great idea. I'm wondering, is there going to be a contract on it that, has more specifics in it? And it's a nice outline. I'm not complaining, I'm just
No, I
saying.
think we would anticipate Jennifer sitting with Aaron and drawing the contract with these deliverables with the timelines and assuming the notes of payments, a payment schedule that reflects no more than
Right,
25 out of
certain-
this budget and 25 out of next year's budget. And
Right, so certain deliverables.
That's
and
correct.
then if there's additional work beyond that, will it be brought back for consideration?
it would be, no additional money would be spent. We are optimistic that there are some specifics that may or may not be in the notes. This includes the website, which Market and Main would create for input and would input and maintain. This includes preparation of all materials and outreach for citizens, records kept of meetings and input prepared by Market and Main. It does not include food or refreshments or anything. That's up to us if we want to do that at meetings. But it does include all of the known and fundamental expenses. It does not include, as we discussed, doing an outreach mailing to every person or paying kids, as we did back in NC days, to walk around and put a leaflet on every single door.
Yeah.
And that's probably, it does not include that expense. So if we want to do that expense, we are optimistic because we have a much greater web presence now in the communications committee, and we know we can get a lot bigger response now. We get it all the time. Probably nothing is as good as walking around notes and putting them on doors. I will always believe that.
And it's
but
only $100.
I'm sorry?
It's only $100.
Right, it's the labor cost of walking it around, but maybe we can use safety. We've talked about that,
Yeah.
about trying to go with that. So we are hopeful that the cost will be less, but we want to be cold-blooded here, and let's just say that it won't be. But I think if you've had a chance to look at the link you were given, or you can pass this around, this goes down. This is very detailed. It is not proposing detail. It's not going to get and say, for example, in Edmond we need to put a bus lane. It doesn't get that far down there. It tries to go for goals. It doesn't try to go down and come up with detailed solutions. That process awaits other processes. But it does say a goal is to anticipate planning the building that's coming on Highland and start thinking about what that traffic means when we get built out on North Highland in the NC district, which will happen one of these days, and we need to be thinking about it now. But if we can get ready for that now, it will be helpful. Yes, ma'am.
Just having been on the planning committee for, I guess, 2 years, year and a half, we've definitely seen with the economy improving, just an increase in the number of applications for variances, zoning changes, all of these kinds of things, which we love to see the economy picking up, but also it puts pressure on the Civic Association and Planning Committee. And this kind of process basically codifies and has us all wrap our heads around the things that we have been trying to apply very consistently from experience, having had planning committees for so long that have done great work in the background. But this puts it all in one very good place, our goals and thoughts, And it also builds on a lot of great work that's already been done by prior boards, the neighborhood commercial, a lot of the work done to understand the history and the development of the neighborhood. So as being on the planning committee, I think it will be a great tool for the neighborhood.
And we mentioned, we thought of one other advantage, which is we did an advertisement for folks who were interested in transportation task force. We got some really excellent responses, some professionals in the field who live in Virginia-Highland and were pretty amazed. We didn't know they were here. Be delighted that they're interested, and we've got to figure out how to make effective use of them. But it was encouraging. Joe, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, sorry.
Billy Joe.
No.
All right, well, there is, I will take that as a motion from,
Okay.
yes, ma'am.
There was one, the only other time I ever heard the board talk about planning to spend big money was in defense, or in terms of legal terms, needing to put money on the table for human issues. So do you think that that threat has passed now?
No, I don't think that the threat you're referring to is ever passed.
Okay.
And never until the resolution of that area occurs, nature rules of development back in, and until things get resolved, it will never be passed. But it will only help us, this will only give us yet another weapon in that battle. Yes, ma'am.
Well, when we did neighborhood commercial, we spent $60,000 on that project. There was a lot of work involved. They had to do, architectural renderings to show the property owners, what they could build it today and what they could build under NC. And there was a lot of work put into that. And that wasn't that long ago. That was 2008 at the very end. So that was $60,000.
Yeah, it was. We won't, the path is theoretically a little clearer here, but many a surprise lies around the corner. So, I don't want to be overly optimistic or foolishly optimistic here, but I think we also have a chance to find these new folks and to get them involved in the association, because there's huge value in that, because we need some new ideas around here. So I'm out of them.
Yeah. Well, I will say the island looks beautiful. Best I've ever seen.
What?
The island.
I mean, is it the
The
triangle?
triangle.
Okay.
Well, there's a story there. We'll talk to you later. Noni Daniel gets all that credit. It looks great.
Looks beautiful.
Noni's also exhausted from all the work, but she did unbelievably well. Are there any more comments, questions, or thoughts? Is the board ready to vote on this? Yes, ma'am?
So did you go back to the proposing company and ask them how we could contain the costs a bit? Sometimes asking just
Well, we
the
actually,
ask helps.
that's fair. No, we had that, I think we had a huge discussion of it last Wednesday when he presented to us about what are the variables that could lower the price, under what circumstances could things, or why is there's a difference between, why is there a range of meetings in here, and what are the variables that will drive it? The more the meetings, the more we'll pay, and the less, the more we'll save. There are two things I think that influence my mind about it. One is that we've dealt with this contractor an extremely long time, for many years, and that historically his billings have come in, they have never come in high, and they usually come in lower than the projected costs given us. Secondly, he did outline some things we can do, and a lot of that has to do with us. If with the more work I think that we do offline, have discussions to get out and resolve some of these things, the better the chance of reaching consensus that is effective and productive, and will move the things along. I don't think there's going to be the inherent resistance to this that we knew and would and did occur on NC. We knew there was going to be a struggle there that almost fell through twice.
But you're getting a lot of different ideas that you're, it's going to
That's
be.
right.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that, as Jennifer mentioned, that we wanted to move on to this was that we knew we'd get a lot of different inputs no matter what. So it was important, we can use them now instead of trying to suppress others. So we did ask, we are conscious, we will be trying, and we're kind of presenting the worst case, because I don't want to dribble it up. So, any other comments, questions? Are we ready to vote on this motion? The motion is to appropriate an additional $20,000 out of this year's budget, with the understanding that we are effectively committing ourselves this board's $25,000 next year. Of course, you can always cancel the contract, it would just be a lot of wasted money, so I don't anticipate doing that short of a catastrophe of some sort. All right, yes, I'm sorry, Ken.
I was gonna say, well, you should have a termination for convenience clause in the contract.
I'm sure we can do that, yeah. Any further comments or questions? We ready for the vote? All in favor, please raise your hand. All right, it is unanimous, and we will proceed. We now are on to the next item on our agenda, which is a very, and I do apologize that we didn't communicate well enough to work on this at the planning meeting the other night. We have a proposal here, please correct me if I misstate, from Ms. Warren, who operates Warren, which, as we have dealt with for a long time, is a private soccer club that is well known and well patronized in this neighborhood. It has an odd commercial entrance. It fronts on Virginia, has an entrance off Greenwood, has a sign on Virginia that's very high and
I mean,
What?
Highland, don't
I'm sorry, did I misspeak?
Highland.
Excuse me, on Highland, I apologize. In fact, I didn't even know the sign was there until she suggested the sign was hard to see. I think there's some truth to that. So she has come back, she and her lawyer and others came up with a notion for what's called a bullet sign, which is currently prohibited in this part of the city code. A sign that overhangs the sidewalk. And we met with her, no one's opposed to the concept. All of the questions have been about how can we do this in a way that doesn't make, blatantly illegal. The existing signs are something that we can live with in the future. So the proposed law that she has written applies to second floor businesses only, has a description of a sign size limit. And what else is?
I believe it's a Greenwood Avenue one.
What's
Yeah, actually, it was
Greenwood and
Greenwood.
St. Charles. And Greenwood and St. Charles, and it's limited to businesses that are on the second or higher floor that have no enclosed operating space in the ground floor. The concept being, if you have some sort of street presence, perhaps you don't need and I've heard it called a blade sign. There's a million words for it: projection sign, blade sign, flag sign, whatever. It, if you have a storefront and can put your sign on the front of the building and it's obvious to everybody where you operate, that's one thing. But if you're on the second floor and you don't have any ground level, and quite frankly, I don't know if there's any other business that conforms to this, which is probably why it's never been considered before. But this is, I don't know, do I need to say anything else? What else do you want?
No, I think the discussion,
What it looks like.
yeah, there are signs of this nature existing.
There is a limit to the distance it can project over the sidewalk, less than half of the distance to the curb. I mean, what we try to do is we try to limit it as much as absolutely possible to this very specific kind of use.
So-
Without,
Is this a proposed amendment to NC? What is that? I don't get it.
Yeah, it's actually a proposed amendment to the signage, to the law, to the City Code of Atlanta, to allow this
Signage
kind of
ordinance.
thing.
yes.
The signage, NC adopts C1 signage standards, which are pretty liberal in some ways, but don't really address her
Absolutely
challenge.
prohibit. In some parts of the city, you can get an encroachment agreement, which is where we kind of started going to hang a sign over the city property. But in C1, it's prohibited. So that's where we are trying to have a little teeny tiny exception to that.
What we found when we walked around was that there are some signs non-conforming over, go figure, over mainly on St. Charles, along 10,000 villages in that area. They're hardly visible because the trees there make them effectively invisible, and all the signage almost invisible. There's a couple of others that are not. There's one in Geeky, there's one at, arguably or not, it's not 100% clear, down at the Mexican restaurant at Amsterdam. And maybe, depending on how you interpret it, maybe San Francisco coffee sign. It's not exactly clear. Those have been there so long, they may be effectively grandfathered. So our only thought, I mean, in any case, this only touches the two, as written, it touches these two streets. And I think have no substantive challenge with it. What I would like to do, if we can, is ask the board, let the board hear, if you have any reaction, let's do it. I'd like you to say that we approve of the concept, and we'll sit around and try to come up with, iron out any differences. Erin suggested slightly smaller signs. She's got a slightly bigger sign. These are not big differences. And
Well, can I make a comment there?
you can, but we're not going to decide it here. So.
No, I just wanted to put forth normally I'm pretty like, okay, if you want it to be, 2 inches smaller, whatever. In the process of this sign application, the city of Atlanta actually failed to realize that the encroachment agreement wasn't allowed in C1 before they instructed me to go ahead and get the encroachment agreement, which requires a $1,000 structural engineering fee, which I paid on the particular sign. All of this for the privilege of paying $1,300 for the application. So if you make the sign smaller than I have proposed, I only cry for the money. I mean.
So rather than decide that right here, but I mean, I assure you, there's no substantive difference here,
Right.
that we can work something out.
Okay.
I'm confident.
Okay.
Rather than take a lot of time up here arguing about 3 feet or 3 feet 2 inches.
Yeah,
or
right,
whatever.
right.
That's the fun we have in the planning committee, so
Okay.
it's only point you take to miss that.
Okay.
But all I can suggest is that if it's okay with the board, if you would support we can express our support for the concept and trust that a couple of reps from the planning committee and these folks will work out a version of the ordinance with these restrictions that is suitable.
So, I'm sorry, the bottom line is, you're not proposing to amend the Atlanta sign ordinance, you're proposing to amend NC for that node, because we adopted the C1 sign ordinance, we would adopt the C1 sign ordinance with these exceptions, is that kind of what you're saying?
This would go into only that node as it's currently written. It would not, as it's currently written.
It'd just be like an amendment to the adoption of the C1 sign ordinance, okay. I got it now.
Right, for that, it'll state that in that node, the following sign is permitted.
Isn't
on
that
these
part of
streets.
the general provisions of NC zoning and not the particular provisions?
The ordinance is written relating to the Atkins Park in C12.
I think that's where it would go, just in Atkins Park. It only proposes St. Charles and Greenwood.
Right.
We had some reservations about writing changes to all the NC that didn't go get vetted by everybody affected in NC. This is so narrowly written right now that it's pretty damn narrow. The only argument I think anybody else could make might be the people along Amsterdam who don't have the similar right, but in fact they're pretty damn visible from Amsterdam. They're coming up Amsterdam. They got a huge wide street, and I don't think and they're not on the second floor. And I think it's going to be okay. And I think we could do a political science exercise that would be interminable about, but I'd rather just solve this problem and move on. And if y'all are okay with it, I would be happy to let any couple of members of the planning committee go with understanding that we're going to send. If it turns out against all odds we can't work this out over breakfast with you, then we'll go in there and have a big fight.
Actually, and then you'll bring the proposed wording back and we'll look at it.
No, we will not. They're trying to go through, and I'm asking that we approve the concept as they've generally written it, and we'll negotiate some further restrictions on the signage. They want to go, Alex wants to take this through the NPU.
Okay, how's it written now then?
Of course.
Okay, is there any other comments about this? Anyone worried about this ideal?
Remember, Ken, a few minutes to
Yeah.
read that, and I'll talk about sidewalks and come back and vote.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and we'll talk about sidewalks and read that. It's a good idea. Go ahead.
So St. Charles actually happened. On the city put in 31 segments on St. Charles, did a really nice job, and the feedback has been great. So several people came and asked if we couldn't reopen the 2013 bundle, which had 129 improvements in it, so that they could get in now that they actually believe that the city will do the work, which I thought was great. So the city allowed us to reopen the bundle, where we've had 34 requests for pricing on additional segments. I'm thinking we may end up with 20 or a few more additions to our 129 segment bundle, at which point it will be closed, which is on the 18th of this month is the deadline for paying. And the city expects to get through the process much more quickly this time now that they've had some practice. So
Sorry, can you repeat those numbers? We know we have 100 and,
we have 129 paid and submitted.
right?
We have 31 finished and paid. We have 34 that we're in negotiation with property owners over. That would be in addition to the 129. Don't expect all of those 34 to come through, but I do expect some of the 34 to come through. Oh, and I'll pass this around. We have an inventory of pavers. If you want to send a picture of the inventory around.
This is a stack of papers
This is,
that have been retrieved from torn up sidewalks, which Peggy is
so we have
selling.
pavers in inventory from people that want to repair their sidewalks, and we just put a little north of $1,700 worth of paper sales into the Civic Association fund. We expect the additional, however many, up to 34 segments that we're adding to draw a little bit out of the Civic Association budget in matching funds, probably not more than $2,000, which keeps us, yeah, we've spent about, we budgeted 14, we spent a little north of 8. We'll probably spend another 2, which sort of balances out with the paper money.
Awesome.
Questions? Am I quicker than you, Pam?
It's really, I can't help but laugh every time I walk down there. I always knew they would do it, but,
You didn't believe.
well, I was worried.
Oh, my neighbor, I thought I would be dead before the sidewalks ended.
Karen was there, so
Yeah, I've gotten some really nice
it's really
responses. I have to say.
utterly awesome. And well done. This is great stuff, and somewhere 48 frustrated, or is it 58, Billy Joe, former board members who unsuccessfully struggled with this for the last quarter century are smiling somewhere. So many of them are in the great sidewalk in the sky.
Well, between the paver program and the sidewalk bundles, we should be pretty close to 200 improvements. Just under 200 improvements, which is good.
Is the ordinance going along well? You're also working on the ordinance to make this less onerous in the future?
Which,
You're working on some sort of special task force for sidewalk efficiency for Virginia.
oh yeah, I'm on the city's sidewalk
So that's
task
going
force now.
slower.
And that actually has been reasonably successful. The part of the subcommittee that I chaired had to do with neighborhood initiatives for sidewalks and with red tape and bureaucracy. And we put together a pretty solid list of recommendations for the City Department of Public Works, several of which they're in the process of adopting, or at least talking about as, of course, this is what we're going to do, which I take as pretty good. And I've been on vacation, but I need to get that to John so we can put it up and people can see what the recommendations are.
Anything on Streets Alive that's still on for September, for Sunday, October 6th, right?
I believe I haven't heard from them lately, but I made myself a note to follow up.
Okay, that would be good, because it'll be on us the next time we meet, and
Yes.
if there's anything to do, I mean, we may not have anything to do. Go ahead with tour homes.
Are you?
Are you ready to go?
Oh, yeah, I think this looks great, but my only concern is 14 square feet is pretty big.
Well, we're gonna talk about the 14th, well, please, let's not discuss it.
No, of
Okay.
course.
No, we'll talk about
You
that.
said you wanted people to
Yeah,
buy
I
into
appreciate
the
it.
concept, and I buy into the concept, I don't buy into 14 square feet.
Okay.
I see the restriction, it can't be more than half the width, but still, that's an awfully big size. Okay, that's what I'm commenting.
I'll send you an email about it.
Well,
Or we'll not even,
we're
we'll not
gonna
even
talk
do
about,
it.
we have the same reaction, but we're gonna talk, and we'll
Okay.
work this out. Life is gonna be good.
It's gonna be good.
It's gonna work out. It may or may not be 14, but it's gonna be good.
Well, mine isn't even 14, so.
Well, that's right, so it's gonna work out.
Yeah.
Pam, do you wanna go first for Summerfest?
Oh, well, you know, I was gonna try to update the P&L for tonight, and I didn't get an opportunity to do so. We still don't have beverage revenue, and, you know, that's very frustrating, but Jack's gonna help me, you know, paying Rob once again. Arturo gave us the road race revenue, and it was 10,000 over what I projected, which is good. So, other than from what I said last time, we might be a little up from where we said we were last time, and I'll have it hopefully in the next couple weeks, send it out to everyone, and then definitely you'll have it in time for the annual meeting, the final net revenue.
And actually, we are, I wanna remind the board that we are, actually, I know you're gonna go over it on your dates thing, we do have our regular scheduled meeting of this board the second Monday in January, because we have variances and we're not doing them.
You mean September?
September.
In
You said
September.
January.
My apologies.
Oh, why?
I'm
Okay.
really looking forward to this master plan. Go ahead, tour of homes, remarks from Angelica, is that it? Is that good? That was great. Tour of homes reports?
Angelica had to leave, but she gave me, because it's been a while. They have 8 homes and Briarcliff Summit, so they're ahead of last year, they're doing great. The great news too is, considering adding in the fact that they have $2,000 worth of water donated from Whole Foods, which is great, they have already $18K in sponsorship money, which is, last year, I think they got to $13K in total. And they haven't reached out to the vendors at the 8 homes yet to get those additional sponsors.
That's great.
So it's always better if we get sponsors up front, in case we have a rainy, hope we don't. So the Tour of Homes community is doing a great job, Angelica and the whole team.
This came to me. That's one of the checks.
Excellent stuff. And we're on to, I do want to formalize the board. I mean, I do want to formalize our agreement here is with Christie. We will meet with Christie and work something out. We'll try, it's not 14 feet, so it'll be less than that. So we'll work that out. Is that okay with the board? I don't like a motion to this event. All in favor? Thank you
Wait,
very
what
much.
is the official motion? I'm sorry.
The motion is that we'll appoint a subcommittee of the planning committee to resolve the final wording of it, and in the optimistic hope that great minds will think alike. And with that, assuming that if we can, we'll report back to the board, otherwise we'll send it on to NPU F with our approval, and we can work that out, I'm sure. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thanks for coming in. I'm sorry.
Did we vote?
Yes, we did vote.
Okay.
Thank you, it was unanimous. We're on to parks. Lauren.
Thank you. Couple things tonight. We are winding down on our agreement with the construction company to begin the renovation plan for Townhouse Park, primarily on the volleyball court end. And it looks like the project's totaling around $99,335. We were awarded a grant from Park Pride last year to do this project completed by May. So they'll pay up to 50% of the project's funds. So we are planning on them being at 50, and then we were going to commit to raising or gaining the other 50,000. Looks like so far with pledges, we have a pledge from the board for 25,000 that we put in for this year. We have a pledge from the Volleyball Association for 5,000. We have a pledge from the city to actually pay for part of the fencing to go around it. There's some meetings we've had from them. We received the Love Your Block grant. We have been pledged, I'm not sure if this is going to come through, another 4,000 from one of the in-town races. So that puts us at around like 22,000 in pledge commitments in addition to the 25 we had pledged to put in. Which leaves us just about 3,000 that I'm hoping to to bring in from fundraisers, break sales, things for the park specifically, which would put us at, actually, if we can do 3,000 to 5,000 on the brick sales or other fundraisers, at 101, 750,000 for the total project. But I wanted to ask the board tonight, because of that additional 25 we have to bring in to meet our match, if we could, if you guys would agree to allow us, if and when, as you know, construction projects kind of ebb and flow, if we don't have all the pledge money in from like the volleyballers or the Glency Foundation or other groups, at the time that it comes due for us to pay for the project to be completed, if we could front that extra 25,000, hopefully it wouldn't be the lump sum of 25,000. Hopefully we'll have some of these funds in the door before the completion of the project, but in the event that we didn't. Again, the project doesn't actually have to be completed by next May or until next May, but we would love to have it completed by the end of this year. So that's our goal. So I'm just seeking approval that if the funds, if the pledge funds or fundraising efforts haven't all come in by the end of the year when the project's completed, needs to be paid for, we can help by fronting the money or allowing Arturo to cut the checks to pay the construction company before the money comes in the door. Does that make sense?
And actually, I think it probably won't be, I actually think, as I look at these numbers, with the park price 25, which is good to go, our budget allocation of 25, good to go.
The park
City-
price is 50.
Right, I'm sorry, 15, 25. The City of Atlanta Parks has pledged, we put down 12,000 here because it's really what the fences are that they've committed to playing. That's good to go. So that's 87,000 right there. The one that we're not sure of the timing of, we are ever so optimistic, is the Volleyball Association's $5,000. That's the one that we really cannot directly influence. We have the Love Your Block money will come in and we will be able to match it with in-kind labor that's going to make it worth, in fact, almost $3,000 in in-kind. We're optimistic, and I was also talking to Alex tonight and other sources, that we're going to get some support on the sidewalk along Arcadia there from other sources, which would be, we estimated about $4,400 for the sidewalk, or not the plaza on the corner. If all of that came in, we're effectively in great shape right now before anything else goes. But what the volleyballers we are confident. We'll be even more confident when the check clears the bank. And they have pledged it in great solemnity, and we believe them.
And also start making installment payments.
Well, and also there's the possibility of some in-kind donation from Trees of Land. There's a lot of paintings to go in around that, which we've estimated to be around 5,000.
That's right, 55. Actually, we have it listed at 55, and they've pledged to do that. And we also have a letter from them for our annual grant request, which was sitting over there.
The letter?
Yes. And we always support them generously with funding, and it occurred to me that we might support them generously with funding through this grant match. In any case,
Good idea.
yeah, it's the same difference. It's just which pocket it comes out of. It's the same money. They won't care, and Park Rod won't care. So we'll be very open about it. It's something, I'm saying it right here. So I actually think, Lauren, I think if this board would agree to let Arturo, if needed, just cover the $5,000 piece and write checks for $30,000, as this came in here, up to $30,000, 25 of which we have committed to pay. And we may not need to do, it'll be a great incentive to us to get going on the fundraising for the fall and get some money rolling in there. And I think that really will do it, because with Park Pride's 50, that 30 and 12 in parks, that's $92,000. And that's without touching any other source. And with the 55 from them, it's $97,000. We are effectively there. So if this board would agree to authorize Arturo to write up to a total of $30,000 in checks, the first 25 of which will be the money we've already pledged, the last 5 of which we effectively need to fundraise and return to the treasury if we need it at all, which we want to do anyway. I mean, we're anticipating that the fundraising campaign, the goal is not to just return that 5 and to cover any other things, it's to get as much of that back as possible, because it could, you never know, there might be something else we need to do. It's a sort of a joke. So I think I'd be okay if we just add, we've already on the hook for 25, and we got a motion to authorize him to write an additional 5,000. And if we get in a hole bigger than that, if we have problems, we'll come back and tell you, and you need to know about it anyway. Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
If you do that? That's a much more modest number. And I don't think there's a great chance we won't need it. So,
Don't we have to, didn't you do your, doesn't Park Pride, do you have to be a nonprofit to get your money from Park Pride? Doesn't that money have to go to the VHCA?
they haven't insisted yet, so
Okay,
we're not for profit.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm in a 501c3.
If they do, we'll run it through VHCA.
Right, I just thought that was.
No, we got a meeting, we're gonna have to meet with them shortly, but this version's been massaged like a sore athlete. It's been gone over so many times.
Maybe it's they have to pay it to a 501c3, but whatever.
I don't even care. We got one, we know where to find one if we need it, so. I think that's the motion. Is there thoughts, questions, anxieties, discussions?
So,
Well, as long as we got the cash flow, we do that either.
We do. All right, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, unless there's further discussion, raise your hand. All right, I would like to have a separate motion authorizing us to sign on behalf of the board a contract reflecting the general terms of the cash, of the contractual obligations in this. That is, for these amounts of money with this company, which is recommended by Peter Frawley, who's known to Park Pride, that we'll be allowed to sign a contract
For that amount, for that work?
for that amount. And we're going to manage this in a way that I think that should be all the cash exposure that we will have. And Park Pride will approve the contract, and we'll know where the matches are, and they'll approve the match ahead of time. So we will
Who's the
reflect-
contractor?
Hutcherson Horticultural,
Company.
which Peter has dealt with at great length, our landscape architect. We did originally John Howell and did New Holland, so we have a long record with them. And by the way, Peter just got married. He and his partner flew to California last week and got married. It's pretty awesome. And we found some way to celebrate that with him. All right, that's the motion. We've already voted, I think.
Yes.
Oh, no, on the motion to allow us to sign the contract on behalf of the association. It's been seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. All right. Ms. Carlisle.
You're looking at calendar.
Yes, ma'am.
Items. September 19th, our general meeting, which is starting at 6:30. We need to make sure that I think it's on the calendar that way, isn't it?
Piece we put out says 6:30.
It'll start with the choir, we hope, we believe and hope. The Spark Choir will come and sing, and that'll get us there. Ask your friends to come.
Definitely ask friends, make sure friends, family show up at 6:30 and sign in with an ID bill. September 22nd is our plan for the organizational meeting.
That's for those elected to the board. We need to have an organizational meeting, and I'd like to do it the Sunday following, and just get moving.
what time?
We haven't set a time. How about 7 p.m.? Is that possible? 7 p.m. on Sunday to go out for the board for people?
So the Sunday that's just
Right
3
after.
days
Right
later.
after
3 days
the
later.
meeting. And does that sound good?
That sounds great.
We talked about doing our grants meeting on September 5th.
Thursday, I think.
7 o'clock?
As well. Somebody had to check.
I think that's,
Let's make
Where?
sure we
That's
got
a
the date right.
Thursday. It's a Thursday.
thank you.
It's a Thursday, and we'll a site to be determined.
That's all.
And we do have the regular meeting on, which will be brief, and we'll try to be agenda driven on the regular second Monday of next month to deal with variances and such matters, so we don't have to deal with them in the meeting.
September 9th.
Yes, ma'am. Right here. Is that it? Okay. Any other business before us? 46, we are adjourned.
So we should have a good meeting in August.
Email about the